Jauhari, who is the head of supply chain management for a company called Shriram, Pistons and Rings. He's been working for this company as the head of SCM for just 6 months, just recently. He was previously the chief procurement officer of a company called Rockman Industry, based in Delhi. And he was also before that the VP and head of corporate purchase for Krishna Maruti Group, also based in Delhi. So he's got a lot of experience both in supply chain and procurement. So Mohit today will talk about the digital transformation of procurement and the future of supply chain management. So welcome, Mohit. Go ahead.
A very good morning, friends. My name is Mohit Jauhari, and I would like to first of all thank Max for the wonderful words and wonderful introduction. Thank you, Max. And thank you, Denny. I know you have been working behind the scenes, but the work is very, very appreciable. I would also like to thank Procurements Asia for getting me onto this event. And I would also like to thank the Global Supply Chain Council for promoting and supporting this initiative. Thank you so much. And I would like to welcome the attendees to this session on digital transformation of procurement and the future of supply chain management. Welcome once again to all the attendees. I am overwhelmed by the number of attendees who have opted to attend my session, and I know it's a huge responsibility on my shoulders to make sure that I satisfy your queries towards the end of the session. So please make a note of all the questions that you may have on the bottom most chat box option that you have on the screen, and I'll be more than happy to answer them towards the end of this session. As you can see, once again, welcome to digital transformation of procurement and future of supply chain management. The presentation structure is like this. I would first take you through the evolution of procurement, then we'll move on to traditional procurement. We'll talk about the need for a paradigm shift in procurement. We'll also touch upon procurement from an Asian perspective, the scenario in Asia and how things are panning out, where do we stand with respect to global standards and all that. Then I'll take you through a journey of digital transformation of procurement towards Procurement 4.0. We'll also talk about supply chain management towards the latter part of the presentation. And then I'll wind up with a futuristic look towards procurement and supply chain functions and answer questions before we conclude the session. So the structure is something like 20 minutes for the presentation, which I'll try to wrap up within the stipulated time, and then we'll have a 10 minutes chat session for questions. And please note my details. I would be available beyond this session as well, and I'll be more than happy and glad to answer all your queries. So first, we look at the evolution of procurement from a transactional to strategic. So if you look at how transaction driven, we have been doing transactions and procurement since time immemorial, and how transaction driven became efficiency driven, price driven. Then the word opened up and it became global driven. Then finally, towards the end or right now, we are in a business strategy driven transactional or procurement phase. So the reactive buying turned into strategic buying, category management, and now every procurement professional takes a lot of pride in saying that he can bring about change in his or her organization. From an IT perspective, from an EDI scenario, we transitioned to MRP, then to ERP, then the internet came in, and now we are living in the scenario of sourcing suites. If you plot the complexity versus the spend, or the market complexity versus the spend, you will see the lower the spend and lower the market complexity will lead to a routine kind of a transactional buying. But as you move up the spectrum on either of the axes, you will move towards critical and leverage procurement. And on the topmost right-hand corner, you will get into a strategic procurement kind of a scenario. If I were to talk about procurement evolution on an axis wherein we plot how procurement is treated in an organization and how it adds or how the focus changes, you'll see in an organization where the procurement is operational, there's hardly any focus on savings, and the focus is primarily on ensuring availability of material. As you go towards a standard procurement function wherein there'll be savings through price reduction, price negotiations, so the price becomes a focus. As you go higher up the spectrum to a professionally managed procurement function, you'll see a TCO or the total cost of ownership approach coming in. There'll be a lot of focus on the cost, and in an excellence driven procurement function, you'll see a lot of focus on cost out and value add. So if you look at how we have evolved from an availability focus to a value focus just by the change in dynamics or the importance being accorded to the procurement function in an organization, this chart is self-explanatory. And if you look at the evolution of procurement over the last 50 odd years from 1970 onwards, from a highly transactional procurement, we went into supplier consolidation by the 80s. We were looking at indirect and the non-considered spend towards the 90s. Then the focus turned towards supplier relationship management. And towards the turn of the century, we started in getting into strategic sourcing, automated spend analysis suites became vogue. And then we are now into digital procurement, which happens to be the topic of my presentation today. There was a gentleman by the name of Charles Babbage. Now look at how prophetic he was. In 1832, this gentleman states, and I read, that a materials man should be someone who selects, purchases, and tracks goods used on a project. Essentially the modern day CPO or the chief procurement officer. I mean, how prophetic. 188 years ago, this gentleman could make this kind of a statement. Amazing, isn't it? Now, traditional procurement has its own set of challenges from repetitive tasks, a lot of manual interaction, lot of manual transaction happens between the buyer and the seller. Every phone call for that matter takes about 6 minutes. It is time consuming, expensive because your people are money, time is money. So a lot of wastage of time and money happens. A lot of paperwork is there. It is prone to errors because of a lot of paperwork and duplication of work. You'll need lots and lots of people to manage a traditional procurement function. There's hardly any visibility across from one silo to the other. People kind of work in silos in a traditional procurement function. There's a lot of miscommunication and it amounts to at times mistrust between the buyer and the seller because the buyer and seller don't seem to be transparent enough to each other. So the whole process becomes convoluted or doesn't look like a efficient process because of chances of fraud, bureaucracy, lots of paperwork. It is time consuming, as I said. A lot of data has to be churned and managed manually. So the need for shifting this approach towards the modern approach, which is more of a centralized procurement, strategic in nature, which depends upon automated processes, which talks about global procurement as the word has opened up. And obviously environment consciousness is very, very important in a modern procurement function. And look at how the value gets added in the procurement function. If the organization is small, the focus is on understanding the spend. Then as the organizations grow, it's about getting into the details of the spend. The bigger organizations try to predict their spend, and then towards the higher end of the spectrum, as the organizations become bigger and bigger, the focus becomes towards creating value which can actually transform businesses. So from a transactional tool, procurement can actually end up becoming a value creator. So that's the paradigm shift from price management to cost management to strategic sourcing, category management. And now in 2020, we are talking about value management. We'll now talk about the scenario that we all live in, which is the Asian scenario. There's a study which was done by Bain, and as per that, you can see the results wherein there is lack of systems for capturing data. There's hardly any focus on managing risks. Then we all know what bullwhip effect is, wherein there's a lot of buffering at every element of the supply chain, and that is what seems to be happening because inventory is being used as a tool to counter demand management shortcomings. How criminal is that? Inventory being built up just to tide over the peaks and troughs in demand? I mean, how primitive is that? Not really worth it. We need to improve and improve really fast. And there's a lack of focus on supplier relationship management. So that's something. And if you look at this graph that we have here, from a first generation, which is tactical buying, to a second generation, which is optimized sourcing, going on to a third generation of strategic procurement and value chain integration in the fourth generation. Sorry to say, but the Asian scenario is very, very bleak as of now. I mean, we are somewhere in between stage one and stage two, mostly. Not to take credit from the organizations who are doing wonderfully well sitting inside of Asia. So they are the ones who we need to look up to and benchmark against. The ones who are the laggards need to look up to the organizations who are here, maybe achieving global standards. So as you can see, the process and system efficiencies or the lack of it is what is creating chaos in the Asian procurement scenario. There's a lot of buffering, as we saw in this slide, and a lack of focus on global sourcing. So we need to fasten our seat belts and really speed up actions so as to achieve global standards as far as procurement is concerned. A lady by the name of Corina Owens, she has made a statement which says big data is equal to big opportunities, and how prophetic she is. It's all about extracting more and more value, making sense out of data. Customers are very demanding. They need you to know what they want instead of the other way around. Getting the best quality product at the best possible price is something very, very critical for a procurement person. Benchmarking is a continuous activity, has to happen, and for which you need to refer to a lot of big data. Big data also is unstructured, so tapping into it, developing mechanisms or algorithms to take care and make the best use of such data is very, very critical. IT is the enabler which every procurement function, every procurement personnel has to use because it enhances visibility, it reduces your cycle time, it helps you improve your supplier management, your vendor management. You can actually focus on data, you can actually dig out data and information, get into better category management. E-procurement, everyone knows it's almost a 2-decade thing, but still a lot of questions get asked about e-procurement, and I'm sure you would also want to know a lot about e-procurement, and I'll be more than glad to handle and answer your queries on e-procurement, whether it's about transparency, simple and fast process, remote participation. A person sitting in Honolulu can participate in an event happening out of Bangalore. So that's efficient. So we'll talk about it in case you have some questions on this. And over the past 4 or 5 years, as you can see, a lot of digital focus has come into procurement, whether it's the procure to pay cycle, big data management, digital supply chain, digital supplier and category management, innovation management. And from an MRP to ERP to e-procurement, we are moving into a scenario of procurement 4.0. Everyone talks about industry 4.0. There's a lot happening on procurement 4.0, which is using advanced automation and robotics, IoT and intelligent infrastructure, blockchain to improve visibility, situational awareness software, which give you real-time insights, And this is a schematic of how Procurement 4.0 works, from shaping an agile organization, making it a digital organization, leveraging supplier relationships towards competitive advantage, making the entire supply chain or procurement function more and more competitive is the focus of Procurement 4.0, which relies on connectivity and communication. It relies a lot on data intelligence and analytics. Human, machine, machine, human, machine, machine learning is going to be the way forward for the future. Advanced procurement, whether it's about robotics or transportation optimization solutions, everything falls into the gamut of Procurement 4.0, which will help you lower your costs. It will improve your risk management. It will improve visibility end to end from supplier to customer. And since you're going to take care of risk, you'll ensure that and you will have better compliance. Now, I'll quickly take you through a few real life examples of procurement from an Indian perspective, wherein a company which is roughly $500 million, it operates with just about, can you imagine? It operates with just about 27 people spread over 8 locations. 8 locations, 27 people, $500 million of turnover. How are they able to do it? Because they have automated their procurement function to the extent possible using low cost automation, whether it's the rate change variation alert. For example, if a person sitting in Delhi reduces a rate for a certain item, the person sitting in Chennai gets to know of it and can take suitable action real time. Suppliers get to know about receipt of their material, the buyers get to know when the material gets received, and the indentor who had asked for get all this information in real time. A lot of reports get generated real time. The suppliers get intimated about payments real time. So a lot of human interface in the whole procurement function goes off. Then the automation of purchase orders, they send out PDF purchase orders on release in SAP and release, mind you, on mobile phones. They have an app which actually helps them approve purchase orders on the mobile phone. So it automates the process like nothing else could. So their people are able to focus on the core and critical tasks. Whenever a supplier material gets rejected, the supplier gets automated information through SAP. In case a supplier was supposed to supply 100 and he supplies 90, then the automated alert goes to him real time. The supplier ratings are automated. The share of business for all the suppliers are defined using automated supplier rating. How low cost and tech heavy is that? They get a lot of reports. They've automated their inventory to the extent that the norms get set based on previous usage trends. And the norms once set, no buyer is allowed to procure anything beyond those norms. So the limiting of inventory or the optimization of inventory happens automatically. Then they procure a lot of stuff using e-procurement, you name it, and they procure it through that route, whether it's contracts, whether it's trees for their plantations and whatnot. They've automated the planning process wherein an Excel-based system with phone calls, emails leading up to overstocking or shortage, leading up to higher ICC or shortage of material for production has been done away with an optimized inventory and smooth production. From a disoriented process, they've gone to a very, very seamless kind of a process. So the 3 plus 3 plus 2 mantra, or the 3 plus 2 plus 3 mantra as I call it for a procurement professional, is you have to create competitive advantage. You have to ensure risk mitigation. You have to be collaborative. You have to build trust with your supply chain partners. You have to outsource to the extent possible. You have to take repetitive tasks out of the process. You have to build stakeholder relationships. You have to learn and grow. The elders need to learn from youth, and the youth need to take advantage from the gray hair of the elders. So that's how it has to be. It has to be a continuous learning curve. We'll quickly touch base on supply chain management, which is a very, very intricate topic. The top challenges being cost containment, customer intimacy, globalization, how to handle the risk, and how to ensure visibility across the supply chain. There's a complexity challenge on account of increased customer locations, increase in manufacturing facilities, increase of inventory locations, increase of number of strategic suppliers. higher fluctuations and very, very unpredictable customer demands, which lead to risks related to inventory management. You have to ensure that the service levels are high. You have to ensure that environment gets taken care of. You have to ensure that the suppliers get paid on time, but at the same time, you have to ensure that the cash flow cycle is intact. Then there's the flexibility challenge, which is on account of the forecast getting more and more inaccurate, the customers becoming more and more demanding. Then there's a huge talent shortage in the supply chain function. That is something which is adding a lot of gray hair to everyone in the supply chain management function, which from a linear function is now evolving towards a networked, interconnected, digitalized kind of a function. The 10 facets of supply chain management for the future are technology, IoT, speed is very, very critical. Customization will be the key. Optimization of inventories and working capital, building relationship, enhanced relationship with the partners. Blockchain will be a big thing going forward. Capacity crunch and excess capacities will play havoc left, right, center. And integration of the overall operations will be a key towards a good supply chain. And as the new generation of millennials joins in, data reliability, faster workflows, synced and interconnected data and systems will be the way forward. The key traits will be efficiency, logistics and handling speed, data management, handling, and the drivers will be data-driven decisions, digital supply chain, artificial intelligence, machine learning, and whatnot. I've tried to build a digitalized integrated supply chain schematic, which will have a digital integrated supply chain planning function, a sourcing and procurement function, which will focus on supply lifecycle, contract management, digital manufacturing using Industry 4.0, AI and machine learning, and then digital distribution using AI and machine learning again, and integrated warehouse and transport management. So this will be your window to the future. I've just tried to give you a window to the future of supply chain management. And as I wrap up this presentation, I would like to thank you all for a very, very patient listening. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and I'll be more than happy to answer all your questions. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. That was very interesting, really cool insights on this presentation. I wanted to remind you again that you can ask questions at any time by using the comment sections at the bottom of the screen. I see that already some of you have asked questions, so keep going, ask your questions. Speakers are here to answer them live, but they will also come back after the live summit, to take those questions. The next thing I want to remind you is that to join us after the live panel discussion, we have created virtual networking where you guys can meet with the speakers and delegates through virtual roundtables, real-time video calls. It's actually quite cool. Come and join us. So it's again at 11:30 Hong Kong. After the panel discussion, you'll be able to do some virtual networking. Last thing is we have a group on chain.net. Some of you might know already. You receive an invitation from us. In this group discussion, you can continue to interact with the speakers and delegates, ask questions if you have any, and also we'll be sharing some really exciting content on this group during the live event, but also in the coming weeks. So again, hope you're enjoying the summit, and we'll see you at the next one. Thank you.